I became carnivore. My overall health journey started probably about 13 years ago or so. I was having severe chronic health issues that were kind of becoming kind of frightening to me, particularly it's called sleep apnea, where just as I was falling asleep, I would stop breathing I would just completely stop breathing. And then the lack of oxygen would jolt me awake in a panic. And it
Oh
took
my
me
God.
a few moments to realize that I just stopped breathing and I was okay and not completely dying. It was terrifying. And I found out that that was really bad for your heart. And that was happening a lot. And I was just overweight and inflamed. And I think, I think we all at some point, when we're on that standard Western diet, you reach an inflection point where either consciously or unconsciously you decide whether or not you want to continue with your addiction and your unhealthy lifestyle, or you want to fix yourself and live better. And I don't know why I had the like the wherewithal and just the mentality that said I don't want to die. I don't, I know what I have to do. It might have been just, the fact that I had been studying health for a long time. I had been a bodybuilder, so I was always learning about diet and stuff like that. And I was slowly accumulating knowledge and facts and everything was slowly kind of pointing me towards, you got to get rid of the seed oils and the refined grains and the sugar. So that put me on a paleo diet. I was a paleo for about 5 years. And I was doing really well. I had lost like 70 pounds in 8 months, and I was in Taekwondo, jumping around like a maniac, at like in my mid to late 30s or so, and having a ball. And I was like just regaining my youth again, feeling alive again. And then I had a friend, my friend, his name is Amir Zendelman, I think he is. And he's big into like biohacking and CBD oil and fasting and all this kind of stuff. And we were talking, he said, you're healthy, but do you want to be healthy or do you want to be optimal? And I said, I want to be optimal. He said, well, you got to go keto then. So I cut out, like, paleo allows for like whole food carbs, like sweet potatoes and white rice and stuff. But so I cut that out and went just, high fat, meat, butter and leafy green cruciferous vegetables, like non-starchy vegetables. In other words, asparagus, avocado, squash, broccoli, kale, cauliflower. And I was that way for 5 years, and I was doing really well on it. My body fat was super, super low. I was super, super lean, and I was doing just really, really well. And then I went into a bodybuilding competition back in about the same time. About the same time I became a firefighter. Right before I became a firefighter, I got into bodybuilding competition. And in the prep for a particular show that was in spring of 2023 or 2023, I'm sorry. I was so low in my food intake, being keto, that I cut out the vegetables just so I can have nothing but protein and fat, protein for my
Hmm.
muscle building and fat for my energy. And I just cut out the vegetables completely. It was supposed to be temporary. I was just in contest prep, and eventually I was going to go back to eating the way I was. But after about 2 weeks, I had shoulder impingements that just nagged me for years, and I really couldn't lift heavy, and it was very, very uncomfortable to do certain movements. They were gone within 2 weeks. And then
After cutting vegetables.
after cutting the vegetables, yep.
Mm.
And I was like, no way. And then I had golfer and tennis elbow in both elbows and both arms. And I would say probably between like 6 and 8 weeks or so, that was gone. So I have no pain in my joints whatsoever. And I was like, and then, you learn about things like oxalates and all of the ways that the anti-nutrients just go to town on your joints, and you think you have just like arthritis, or your joints are just worn down from old age, when really you're just eating too many vegetables. So I've been carnivore ever since. There was no reason to ever go back, and especially when you realize that you're getting all the nutrients you need from the meat, especially the red meat. Why would you waste your money and go back down that path again? It was just a no-brainer for me. So I've been carnivore since probably about February of 2023.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Can you expand a little bit on the vegetables and the anti-nutrients part for
yeah,
people to
sure.
understand?
I mean, every living organism wants to live. It's their basic instinct to survive and to procreate. So animals can run away. They can kick you with their hooves. They can impale you with their antlers. They can bite you or claw you, scratch you. The plants are stationary. They can't do anything like that. So they have, and people just assume because they're just there that you just eat them. That's what they're there for, to be eaten. But they don't want to be eaten any more than animals do. So they have defensive chemicals, mostly anti-nutrients that are inflammatory and and cause like all kinds of problems like leaky gut and autoimmune issues, hormonal issues. And that's just their basic fundamental, nature in, just by themselves, all things being equal. Then you start spraying them with things like atrazine and glyphosate, all of these endocrine disruptors. And it just creates a nightmare in your body. And but fundamentally, even if you're growing your plants organic and completely, like I used to grow my own food. I call it biointensive, where all of my fertilizer was homegrown compost in completely natural soil, and I was still probably just consuming massive amounts of plant chemicals. There's actually more pesticides in the actual plants than there are sprayed on the plants by farmers. So it's just their natural defense against being eaten, and people have to understand that just as much as any animal doesn't want to be eaten, plants aren't really do not wish to be eaten as well.
But what about fibers? Don't you need them for health?
Fiber? No, you don't. So you can't digest fiber. And a lot of people will say that's what is so healthy about fiber. You can't digest it because the bacteria in your digestive system will ferment it. But first of all, the fiber is inherently attached to fibrous plants that have those anti-nutrients in them that are going to block nutrient absorption. And the only reason that people associate fiber with going to the bathroom and regular bowel movements is because you're shoving indigestible mass into your intestines. That's like, I kind of liken it to clearing out a traffic jam by plowing through it with a bulldozer. So it sucks up all of the water in your intestines, which if you're not drinking enough water can actually kind of like almost like cement your bowel movement and turn it, very, very uncomfortably. I don't want to say, like, I guess, like hard. That's why actually, if you look up the studies, constipation is actually associated with high fiber, whereas most people think that high fiber is associated with regular bowel movements.
Absolutely.
So it's irritating your bowels. It's kind of like, this indigestible mass is just kind of scraping against the inside of your bowels. You get irritable bowels, and you get a lot of bloating and a lot of gas. People say that the primary benefit of fiber is the product of fermentation, which is called butyrate. It's a short chain fatty acid. But if you're in ketosis, one of the primary ketones produced by the liver is called beta hydroxybutyrate. So you're still getting butyrate when you're in ketosis. And without all of the horrid gastrointestinal distress and irritable bowels, you don't have the physiology to digest fiber. Vegans like to point to like apes and gorillas as an example of an herbivore that they'd like to emulate. So I'd like to talk about gorillas and apes because they have a cecum, which is an organ that basically houses the bacteria that breaks down all of the fiber that they eat, the 40 pounds of fibrous plants that they eat a day. They have the cecum. You used to have a cecum many, many, many millions of years ago, before you were human, you being, our species. But that has atrophied and is largely vestigial. It's called an appendix. So it doesn't really do very much for you. It certainly doesn't perform the function that it does in an ape that allows them to eat all of that. So, if fiber there's the dietary requirement for fiber or any carbohydrate is always 0 grams. You're a carnivore. You're not designed to eat it. I mean, there's still, you might still have some vestigial remnants of, our herbivore or frugivore past where you can sort of digest it. Obviously, we do derive some nutritional value from it. But I'm not really sure that it does more good than harm, to be honest with you,
Hmm.
considering all the side issues that come along with it, the joint pain, the intestinal issues. So
Yeah, I suffered from bloating, like extreme bloating and constipation for a good 2 years. And the doctor only gave me all kinds of fiber supplement, and they advised me to eat high fibers. So I was eating a lot of high fiber grains, and it was making it so much worse that I couldn't even like wear like a tight t-shirt, or I felt very uncomfortable every day, really every single day. And I couldn't eat like anything because everything was making me super bloated, probably because of an intestinal permeability going on,
Mhm.
because of all the fibers and the anti-nutrients that I was consuming. And when I switched initially to an animal-based diet, but I got rid of all the vegetables and the grains, in a matter of weeks, I was never bloated again or
Yeah,
constipated.
yeah, and
That's crazy.
we have no problem going to the bathroom. Not to give too much to information, but I had a movement right before we got on the program today. Carnivores love talking about poop, so there was no problem whatsoever. It was a perfectly normal poop. Um, the thing about a high fat diet is when you eat fat, I think it's your liver releases bile, and bile acts like an intestinal lubricant as the food mass passes through it. It like lubricates your intestines. So if you're eating adequate amounts of fat, everything moves just perfectly fine daily, usually sometimes twice a day. It's just a childish assumption that not a day goes by that someone doesn't ask me how I go to the bathroom if I don't eat fiber. I'm like, perfectly fine, bro. Perfectly
Yeah,
fine.
one of the first questions.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's
the
all
other one is your cholesterol levels.
yeah. Or
Anyway,
vitamin C. How are you getting vitamin C?
yeah. When you talk about a high fat diet, high fat carnivore diet, how much fat do you consider high fat? How much fat should a normal person consume?
Sure. It's kind of that's one of the things that kind of vary person to person. Like if you're trying to lose weight or fat, if you're like overweight or obese, you might consider toning back on the amount of fat that you eat and let your body
Hmm.
tap into the stores that you have already. You'll lose weight. You'll lose the fat faster. For me, like somebody like I'm always amazed by Bella, the steak and butter gal. I mention her a lot. She eats literally twice as much as I do, and she eats sticks of butter
It's
and
crazy.
massive amounts of fat. And if you look at her, she's just she's a goddess. She's lean, and there's no excess fat on her, but if I eat and she eats twice as much as I do, like literally, I'm 200 pounds, and if I ate like she did, I'm not going to become obese or anything, but I do get kind of puffy.
Hmm.
So I moderate my fat intake a little bit, just normal fat intake. If you're looking at it from a caloric percentage, which I don't know if we're going to talk about calories at all, but I don't believe in calories. But if you were to add it into your macro app, you would want like usually if it's 1 gram of protein and 1 gram of fat, if you eat the same amount of fat in volume, you'll get the same percentage in so-called calories. So it'll be like 70% fat and 30% protein. So if
Hmm.
you eat a 1-to-1 ratio of protein and fat, so that's basically what I don't even really count my macros anymore though. I just eat like 85, 15 ground beef and when I eat, I cut out the egg whites in my eggs. I eat 3 whole eggs and 3 egg yolks in the morning and some butter. Um, but other than that, I don't really. But I think if I were to put that into a macro tracker, it would still be about 70-30 fat to protein.
Hmm.
So I think that's ideal for me. It's probably ideal for most people, but especially when you're transitioning and you're still healing and still trying to get yourself together from all the chronic issues you might be healing from. You might have to do some observational, you might have to observe yourself and how you're reacting, how you're responding, and adjust accordingly, especially if you have a good coach. Um, you know,
Hmm.
he or she will, explain to you need more fat or less fat. A lot of women I find need more fat because especially if their hormones are kind of haywire. Um, and they've probably, especially because, you know, as a female, they, you know, especially as females, I find a lot of them uh, emphasize low fat a lot more,
Yeah.
and they get themselves all messed up. So they might need, you know, more fat for longer to really balance their hormone, their endocrine system and everything. So
Yeah, I wanted to compete in a bodybuilding show, and the personal trainer I was working with at the time, he put me at a 30 grams of fat a day diet,
yeah.
very low calorie. But we know calorie don't matter, but like anyway, very, very low fat. I wasn't consuming like any animal fat at all. Like the fat would come from peanut butter, for example, you
Mhm.
know? And so I lost my period for a good 2 years and I had all kinds of hormonal problems.
Yeah, bodybuilding, and I'm a former bodybuilder. I have a lot of people that I follow and who follow me that I'm friends with that are bodybuilders, and I really have to keep explaining to them that what we're talking about and advocating for is about health, and what you're doing is kind of like a niche kind of thing that doesn't really have anything to do with health.
Yeah.
You're trying to tweak your body into doing things unnatural to the body and in a very unnatural and unhealthy way, frankly. So yeah, if you want to be a bodybuilder and you want super low body fat, you're going to have to cut out fat. You're going to have to be
Hmm.
super low fat. It's just the way it is. You're going to have to do things that I would never recommend that you do if you're trying to be healthy. But if you're trying to be stage ready and that's what you really want to do, and you're not really overly concerned about health, at least in this point in your life, then you'll do something like that. You'll go low fat. You'll eat massive amounts of carbs and do all kinds of other crazy things that you know if you were really too overly concerned about your future, you wouldn't do, like injecting gear and whatnot. So it's a totally different world, and I really try and emphasize that to people. And I still catch a lot of flack from them because they just don't understand that I'm not really talking about them. I'm talking about people who are, you know, metabolically ill and overweight and sick, and want to make themselves healthy again, not get on stage and
Hmm.
look, you know, peeled and freakishly large.
Hmm. And even from an evolutionary perspective, having a little bit of body fat as humans, why is that important, especially for women?
Well, the availability of food varies, you know. So, you know, Ed Goki always talks about like it's the availability of, like, say, fruit in the wild comes at the perfect time right before the winter comes, so that, you know, so that your ancestors might find some fruit and put on, you know, and activate that Randall cycle a little bit and put on some body fat that'll carry them through the winter. And I'm not really sure exactly why women it's more healthy for them to have a little bit of a higher body fat percentage, but I believe it's relatable to their hormones. Women's
Hmm.
hormones are way more complicated than men's, for the obvious reason. I mean, you all give birth and you have your cycles and things that men don't have. So, but I do believe that's related to you know, the hormonal. Um,
Yeah. Being able to support a pregnancy in
yeah.
case we do have one. Going back to your journey, so what was the biggest change that you noticed? It could be physical, it could be mental or spiritual after adopting a carnivore diet.
Yeah. Like I said, it was the joint issues that I had that
That
just
was.
disappeared, and it just made me feel like 20 years younger everywhere. Like there's just no discomfort at all. Like I used to be able to not even sleep on my side. Like I can't really sleep on my back. But I used to like just turn around like a rotisserie chicken in bed because laying on one side for too long would be discomfort for my shoulders. That's completely gone. And you know, a lot of people experience a loss of like strength and endurance maybe when they transition to a carnivore diet, and I also did too. And it was kind of like a trade-off I was happy to make because I felt healthy in all other ways. I just couldn't, like, I couldn't squat or bench press as much as I used to. But that actually came back after about 6 months. Just
Hmm.
it was like there was like a transition phase, and I think that's why a lot of like gym bros like they fail when they go carnivore, because they just don't understand the intricacies of the transformation process, of the transition process, and they just dive right into it. So everything goes haywire. They lose their strength. They probably experience like things like oxalate dumping and keto flu and all that kind of things, and it's a miserable experience. And I guess they just assume that that's just the way we feel all the time, and we're perfectly okay with it, and maybe we're a little delusional about it. We feel amazing when we don't, but that's all transitory. It's all very, very temporary, and it does involve a bit of discomfort sometimes. But it took your entire life usually to make you the way you are, so it's not going to return to
Yeah, of
normal
course.
overnight or without a great deal of discomfort. You're essentially uh, what's the word I'm looking for? When you get off of an addiction to drugs, you're withdrawing from a drug addiction, is what I'm saying. So I think that's why a lot of people fail. I went through all that. I was fortunate in that the transition that I made from standard diet to carnivore took place over about 13 years. So I didn't. I have someone that I'm chatting with on Instagram, and kind of like, she's not like a client. I'm not really like coaching her. I'm just giving her like some advice. But she went from being a vegan for 7 years to carnivore overnight. And she's like, why am I experiencing these things? And I'm like, you're experiencing like classic symptoms of oxalate dumping. Everything that she's got like breakouts on her face, and she's like brain fog, kind of like flu-like symptoms, and achy joints, and an upset stomach, and whatnot. Her hormones are still haywire. I was like, you're oxalate dumping, and you could
Hmm.
oxalate dump for several years. It could take to get all that oxalates out of your tissue. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it requires a different amount of time for everybody to
yeah,
adapt to this type of diet. But
especially when you go cold turkey, it's like if she had me as a coach, or a proper carnivore coach, they would never have allowed her to do that. I'm amazed and happy for her that she was able to do that, and not quit and not fail.
mhm. So why does a carnivore diet, after you wait for like a period of time when you get used to it, why does it work so well for human physiology?
Well, it's I would say first and foremost, it's your proper species diet. It's what you're designed to eat, and there's like an equilibrium that you're gonna find. Like if you're a gym bro and you go carnivore, you're gonna find it very difficult to put on mass and to be overly strong. And again, I'll go back to the gorilla or the ape. If you examine the life of in a typical day of an ape or gorilla, it just basically sits around doing nothing but eating, because it has to eat 40 pounds of vegetation a day. It doesn't deadlift or squat or bench press, and yet it does very, very little physical activity, and yet um, it would rip it would rip probably the strongest human alive on Earth in half easily. It would just
Hmm.
brutalize. Like it took like Eddie Hall, the strongest man in the world, or Hathor Bjornsson, guy who just broke the deadlift record for humans. Your generic average silverback ape would absolutely annihilate him, just in terms of strength and power. And if you look at kangaroos are another good example. If you ever see a kangaroo, they're
Yeah.
boxers. They got big pecs and big biceps, and they don't work out in the gym either. And humans, like someone like me, I train 6 days a week in the gym, and in my compared to it compare I mean, like I would basically I would have absolutely no defense against a gorilla. He would absolutely destroy me. And the reason for that is that genetically, there's something about our genetics, about our physiology, that prevents us from being that strong and that big, because of what we're designed to be as a species, and that is hunters. We're hunters. So our bodies want us fleet and agile and quick, and doesn't want us putting on a whole bunch of mass. If you look at these like open Olympic bodybuilders, they look like big bloated ticks. They're just massive. You're not supposed to be that way. So those bodybuilders have to go through all kinds of extreme, you know, just circumstances they put themselves through to get to that point where they eat massive amounts of carbs, which are obviously contraindicated. And because, and you know, a lot of people look at all the bodybuilders who die of heart disease at a very young age, and they always blame the gear, they always blame the steroids. And I'm like, well, if you understood, you know, what those massive amounts of starchy carbs and everything that they're eating is doing to their you know, their insides, the glycation and the inflammation that's leading to the heart disease, are probably pre-diabetic at least. You know, there's more to it than just the gear. The gear is not good for them, but they're doing a lot of other things that are not good for them either. So when you're carnivore, do not expect to be freakishly large. If you're trying to put on, the only way you're really going to put on weight is if you're underweight starting out. You know what I mean? Like you might like the girl I was talking about earlier. She was drastically underweight, and she has put on, you know, quite a few pounds of lean muscle mass since going carnivore. She looks fantastic. And so that's the only way you can expect to put. It'll kind of equilibrium you out. It'll kind of balance you, you know, to a happy medium of what you should be as a human. Because I train 6 days a week, and and I lift as heavy as possible. I progressively overload. I do all the things you're supposed to do to put on lean muscle mass. And I have evened out at 200 pounds for the last year and a half at least. Since I got out of bodybuilding, I've been 200 pounds, give or take 2 or 3 pounds. I've just maintained, and no matter what I do, no matter how heavy I go, I just don't get bigger. And there's a reason for that. Is your body just does not want me to be any. If you've seen my like physique photos, like I'm muscular, but I'm not overly large. And that's never going to happen unless I start, you know, blasting carbs and maybe injecting gear. So that is what you should expect. That is what, you know, if you want to sacrifice your health to be huge or you know, freakishly strong, then you can. But if you want to be healthy, then that's the trade-off. You know, you're not going to be weak by any means. You're not going to be skinny or scrawny by any means. You're just not going to elevate beyond what your body is designed to do. In other words.